Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears, your go-to source for go-karts that can't go. We're back here with my project Prelude. This is a car that I bought for 750 bucks, thinking it was going to be a parts car, but it turned out to be a clean title car worthy of restoration. And in the last video, I mentioned that we were in the final push to get this car mechanically sorted so that I could take it down to the shop for an alignment and smog and finally register this thing and legally drive it for the first time. Now, if you've been following the series, you'd know that I've done a lot of suspension work already and even more engine work, but there's still a little bit left to go. You see, after all of that work that I did, putting everything back together, repairing the damage that was done to the passenger side front wheel, there's a little bit of a clunking noise as I'm driving it up and down my driveway. Now, as of recording this, I've already done all of the work and I know what the outcome is. But I'm not going to spoil it for you. Let's just go back in time and get to work because I messed up. We haven't taken it on a proper test drive yet because I don't believe it's quite ready. When I was pulling it out of the garage, I noticed a clunking sound coming from the passenger side front suspension, and I believe it to be a blown shock. Now, that's pretty normal for a car with close to 130,000 miles on it to have shocks starting to go, and this car was hit in that very side, so it is no surprise to me that the shock could be blown. So I got a full set of shocks. They are good quality. I got KYBs on the front, and what do they call on the rear? They are called TRW. Now, since I've pulled the car in nose first, we're going to go ahead and start on the rear suspension because I don't have any kind of lighting yet in my garage. I'm kind of mostly relying on sunlight. I've also got a shop light floating around here somewhere that I can use. But we're going to start on the rear, and then once we're done with the rear, we're going to flip it around and do the front. It's pretty straightforward. These are coil over shocks, so that means the spring is on the shock, and all you have to do is pull out the entire unit as one piece, and then you separate the spring from the shock, and that's where it gets pretty dicey. We'll get into that when the time comes. To pull the shock out, you just have to move this paneling back very carefully because it looks like the clips are already pulled out. So you just have to pull this out, and you can access the two bolts that hold the shock in. It's the same on both sides. Where it gets dicey is removing the spring from the shock. Now, I got a tool down here from Harbor Freight. It's a spring compressor, but it is a clamshell style. You see here, it's got 4 points that apply pressure to all 4 points all at once. So it's hopefully going to be a lot safer than the spring compressors we're all used to. We're going to give that a try, and I hope it works out because doing springs is scary to me. I'm afraid of it because there's a lot of potential energy in those springs. So first things first, let's get the car off the ground, let's get the wheel off, and we can start to pull out the shock. Always use jack stands. I know some people, one in particular, that a lot of people take advice from this guy. He will never tell you to use jack stands because he doesn't think it's worth mentioning. I think it's important to point it out because in the Prelude community, we have lost people due to failing jacks and not using jack stands. People have died. Fuck, finally. And now, do I have enough travel to remove this dumbass shock? I'm going inside. Leave a comment if you saw that coming from a mile away. Let's take apart the spring compressor and hopefully the same thing doesn't happen to a loaded spring. So we want to get this. Oh, Jesus. Oh, this isn't annoying at all. This looks really sketchy. Here's the thing that makes me nervous. That right there. There's not enough space between the spring and that outer cover. So it's just pressing against the outer cover and on the spring. I put some thought into it, and I want to be safe about this. I am going to return this tool because it doesn't fit on my springs. I'm going to take out all 4 shocks. Get this car up on all 4 jack stands, take out all 4 shocks. I'm going to take the shocks down to the shop because they've got a better spring compressor than I do. You're probably writing in the comments right now, oh, just use the spring compressor, or, oh, I use spring compressors all the time. I'm happy for you, if that's you, and you're a better mechanic than me. I'm okay with that. Go ahead and tell me about how much of a better mechanic you are than me. I celebrate you. I think you're amazing. I think you're everything the world needs right now. In a time where cars are getting more complicated, in a time where cars are becoming throwaway commodities, we need you. But we can all agree that when it comes to loaded springs, the best advice you could possibly give somebody is don't do anything you aren't comfortable doing. There are plenty of times in life to step outside your comfort zone, to try something new, to send it and see what happens. Loaded springs is not one of those times. It's not. You will seriously fuck yourself up if you do that. And, you know, by the way, still doing all of this other work myself, that's still a huge win. You know how much money I'm saving doing all of this work myself? You don't need to do everything. You can do it mostly, largely yourself. Well, that was easy. I got the shocks back from the shop today. They had a really quick turnaround. Only cost me 40 bucks. And as you can see, I've already installed the front shocks. There's no real point in showing you reassembly. You've seen that before. So I put both sides together. The front is ready to go on the ground, but I'm going to keep it level for now because I am still working inside the car on the interior, and I don't like being tossed around. So next I have to do the rear. Obviously I have a lot more to do because I took it apart pretty much needlessly. Well, I found the missing bolt for the suspension. I just had to, you know, take apart a few things. It was more than just to retrieve that one missing piece of hardware. I took it apart because I wanted to clean it. I wanted to make it as good as it can be. So I really have no regrets about it. And I just made more work for myself. But I can get all this cleaned up and it's going to look really, really nice. And then we're going to get it back together. And then we're going to drive this car. Oh look, my old friend the Surging Idle is back. Isn't that fun? After all that work, I might have to take apart the intake manifold. So in order to try to resolve this idle, before I start ripping apart the intake system, we're going to use this tool to try to get all of the air out of the system. It's something I need anyway. I went to Harbor Freight and got it for 35 bucks. This is something that you can use on every car, and it will prevent you from dumping coolant all over the floor. How great is that? Let's start up this car, we'll let it warm up, and hopefully resolve this idle once and for all. Well, we may have a bad idle air control valve, and the irony is not lost on me, being the guy that tells everyone it's not your IACV. For it to be the IACV, yeah, I know. Go ahead and laugh. Go on. Get it out. Write in the comments, I told you so. Write in the comments, oh, maybe you'll think about that next time you make a rude comment about it not being the IACV. Go get that out of your system, please. Here's the thing, though. My updated stance on this is until you've done this, don't bet on it being the IACV. Once you've done this and you've run it for a good half hour, like this, with the bleeder valve open, draining back into the system, don't go to idle air control valve. Save yourself time, save yourself money, save yourself some trouble. Properly diagnose it. And the reason I think it's the idle air control valve is because the previous owner ran block sealer, and we saw that it was clogging up ports. We saw that it was getting backed up behind the thermostat. So it wouldn't surprise me if I took this thing off and I saw all kinds of block sealer in the ports. Now, the reason why I want to take the entire plenum off is because this is the idle air control valve. And you see the bolts? They come out this way, which can be a real pain in the ass if you got a fuel rail right there. So these bolts are also pretty long, so it's going to be kind of tough to get out. So I want to take the entire plenum off because the entire plenum is just held on with a few bolts. I think it's like 4 or 6. Now, the novice mechanic might believe that I am working on a Jeep floor mat on the hood of a Miata, but an elite mechanic would recognize that this is a workbench. Let's start taking this thing apart, starting with the hoses, because the hoses make all the sense in the world. This is completely clogged, so that right there could be the cause of our idle surge and overall terrible idle condition. And this side's completely clogged, almost completely clogged. Place my hand open. Ooh, I can feel it. I can. Oh. Let's open it up a little more. Oh my. Oh my. This, my friends, is why you do not put block sealer in a cooling system. Oh my God. This is... ugh. Oh, it's so bad. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to shove stuff in here clear it out, and then just see if just doing that will get me some flow from one side to the next. Because I do have this O-ring that will be easy to replace, but there's a seal in here that will be less easy to replace. This is coming out pretty easy, so that's fortunate. Ugh. That actually wasn't so bad. I didn't get much resistance at all. I just have to keep cleaning this. That's a good sign. That's a very, very good sign. Let's try to clear this out, because this is completely clogged. I might have to get a new fast idle valve. I have a little screwdriver that just barely fits, and you can see the orange shit falling out. See that? Think about that. Next time you want to pour block sealer into your cooling system. Ooh. No. Motherfucker. It broke off. It broke off. I managed to pick up a new fast idle valve. I'm not going to tell you where I got it from because a lot of people misdiagnose this. They get a code, what is it, code 14, and it says IACV, and they think, or their idle's fast, or their idle's bouncing, and they think, oh, well, I must have to change my fast idle valve. So they end up throwing perfectly good fast idle valves in the trash because they don't know how to properly diagnose a car. Air flows through perfectly, which means coolant is going to flow through perfectly. This is really, really a good thing to find because these are hard to find. I am not going to throw this out. I am going, in fact, I'm going to find the piece that broke off, and I'm going to put it all in a bag. And if you need a fast idle valve and you're willing to repair it, like if you can weld aluminum, let me know, and I'll send it over to you at the cost of shipping. So let's get this thing on. I do have to get hoses still. That's going to happen, I guess, tomorrow because I'm running out of time today. I got a very, very late start. But I do have the new O-rings, which are somewhere. So here's the new O-rings for this. It's 91304 PFE 2005. Longer bolt goes up top. Hey, I did say I was planning to work on the Camaro, didn't I? The power steering line has arrived, but before I do that, I want to get this back together so I can test fire this car, see that it comes up to operating temperature, and that this fast idle valve works. So that means it's time to cut some hose. The next thing we need to do is we need to start this up and bleed the system again. However, now that all of the passages are unblocked, hopefully we will actually resolve an idle soon. I'm probably going to have to put more coolant in once it sucks up into the idle control valve and the fast idle valve. But we'll just start this up and keep an eye on it. We're going to put the heater on full blast. And just wait. We're going to let this thing warm up completely to temperature, but this is so far the best it's idled on its own. So far. And there we are. Back to the bouncing idle, my best friend. Oh, I do love this. So I cannot describe how pissed off I was after all of this work to have another surging idle. However, I more or less at least did the right things. First thing I did was I checked the coolant again. It was pressurized. It had plenty of coolant, and the coolant coming out of here was a smooth, steady stream. And I ran it for a while again with the tank on it, so I knew for sure it wasn't coolant related. So from there, the next thing to do is to check for a leak, because vacuum leaks are really easy to check for. Just grab some carb cleaner, start spraying it around, and I got nothing. I got nothing. No change in the behavior of the engine, so that was really, I mean, it's very unlikely that it could have been air related. And then I checked the computer. There were no codes, which was very, very weird, because usually you get like a code 14 if you got a bad idle control valve or bad EACV, whatever the hell this stupid thing is called. And then I decided to unplug this, because that is another diagnostic technique that a lot of people use, is you unplug this and see if the idle leveled out. Well, the idle went down, but it was still bouncing, which was very, very weird. So the next thing I did was I have my brand new fast idle valve. And so when I put this on, I never opened it up. I figured it has to be just fine. My concern was the flow of coolant through the thing. I had never opened up the lid. So I decided to take the lid off, and this guy right here was almost all the way backed out. I tightened that down, and my problems went away immediately. So let me close this back up, and then we're going to start the car up again. And I think we're going to be good to go if all goes well, or I'm going to be very, very angry again. Also, just in case I haven't said this before, I don't understand why people keep touching their fast idle valves and their idle control valves. Those parts very rarely go bad. So stop messing with them, guys. Stop messing with those parts. They very rarely go bad. Good Lord. And if they are bad, there's diagnostic techniques to make sure they're bad before you go ripping them off your car. There's no reason that and that should be rare. There's no reason why people should be selling that and that for $100 each. That's crazy. All right, I'm done ranting. Let's start this car up. Oops. Listen how good that sounds. It's idling nice and low because the car's already warmed up, mostly. Oh, that's nice. So the next step is to take it for a drive around the block, and then we're going to get a timing light on it. I'm probably not going to do that today because it is really cold and I want to go inside. So I got the old rack out, and just like the four-wheel steering rack, I had to turn it all the way to the left so that the driver's side would compress and the passenger side would expand. And then I had to obviously take out the exhaust, which that's actually probably the worst part of this. This is just really messy. I mean, as you can see, it's messy. Next, I'd have the new rack over there. I'm probably going to have to transfer over the bushings, and then I can slip it back in. So since you've already seen me do a steering rack and you know how emotional it gets, I decided to just bang this out. Not only that, it's going to rain, so I really wanted to get my Prelude in here and get this one out because obviously the paint needs work, so it doesn't matter if it sits out in the rain. But real quick, last thing I need to do is fill up the steering reservoir, and then I can start this car up and burp the system and then get this thing on the ground and drive it out. But before I do that, I just wanted to show you the old rack would go clunk, clunk, clunk. There was all kinds of play. Now, there's no play. The steering wheel is unlocked, so I'm moving it around, but there's no clunking back and forth. So I think this solved the problem, but there's only one way to find out. So I'm going to admit, I messed up a little bit. I kind of misdiagnosed this just a little bit. It's not to say I have any regrets, because for one, replacing the shocks is going to make the car handle really, really well. And two, replacing the shocks solves that sagging rear end that happens to every single Prelude when the shocks get old. Now we have a really nice rake from back to front. I know we're on a little bit of a hill, but it really does look so much better with the rear end raked, or at least even with the front. It's really the way it's supposed to be now that I've replaced the shocks. I also don't regret replacing the steering rack, because there was definitely slop in the steering wheel. And that, I believe, was because the high pressure power steering line had been blown, and it had been either sitting or running and driving with a blown power steering line, and essentially a completely dry system. And as that happens, contaminants get in, air gets in, it starts to cavitate things, it starts to make the rack just more and more unusable as time goes on. You see, if you're going to have an open steering system, or if you're going to have no power steering, you need to close off that system so that nothing gets into it. So, since I've already replaced the line, I started to experience a lot of slop in the steering, and we've solved that now. So these are things that were really, really good to do, but they weren't the source of the clunking. And I really wish I had recorded it, but at the time I recorded it, there were contractors, it was complete chaos, and I had my contractor working here, on the shed. I had my electrician working upstairs. They were both making tons of noise, so I just had to fix it. I just had to fix it, and I couldn't really record it. But what was the source of the noise, you say? Let's just go down here for a second. So you see here, we've got this radius rod. This radius rod has some bushings on either side. And for some reason, when I replaced the radius rod, I forgot to put a bushing in. Yeah, I forgot to put a bushing in the radius rod. That was the source of the clunking. That was why the wheel didn't quite look right inside the wheel well. That was it. So now we can go for a drive. After all that work getting this car sorted out, let's go for a drive. Just gonna start the car up. I'm gonna start the... I'm gonna... Oh, motherfucker. So, I have a hypothesis here. I think the starter has left the chat. And typically, you would encounter the scenario and think, well, it has to be ignition switch. Well, I'm here to tell you, I've confirmed it's not the ignition switch. So obviously we don't want to just go throwing parts at it on a hunch. I've already done that, and it didn't go so well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the starter, and I'm going to take it down to AutoZone, and I'm going to have them bench test it. Well, I took the starter to AutoZone, and indeed the solenoid was bad, but the starter was good. So I ordered a new one, and it's going to arrive on Monday. However, I came home and thought, wait a minute, I have a starter. Why don't I just slap it on? So I have done just that. I've slapped on the new starter, put everything back together. Pay no mind to the Prelude with the open hood. I totally didn't take the starter out of my car and put it in this car. That would be silly. No way. There's no way. It tested bad. This is going to be very hard to show you, but I'm going to try. So we are underneath the dashboard of my car. And I took the steering wheel off to make it easier for me to get down here. because it's almost impossible with that giant big rig steering wheel that the Prelude comes with stock. Hold on. Oh, ow, that hurt. Let me just dislocate my shoulder for a second. Okay, we're inside the car. And as you can see here, we're way up underneath the car, and we have a neutral safety switch way at the top of the clutch pedal. There are 2 switches on the clutch of this car. I forgot about that until I came down here to start jumping wires. So we need a 3rd plug for this car to fix the brake and both of the clutches. That's the source of the problem. So I can fix it for $3 instead of $200 because it's not a starter.
Get in the zone. AutoZone.
The AutoZone thing, this is the part number, by the way. The AutoZone thing came with both a plastic and a rubber. I ended up using the rubber because the plastic piece just was too hard to go in. It was too hard to push in that deep.
Phrasing first, boom!
We're going to try starting this car. Turn that off. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and shut the car down because the doors are closed because it is pouring ass rain outside. I reconnected the horn at the steering wheel, but when I press it, that's not quite the correct noise that it should be making. It sounds a little bit weird. And that's because only one of the speakers is working. The other side, we have a little bit of a problem. Now, I also noticed when I turned the lights on that fog light was not coming on. So I decided to take the bumper off, and I wanted to check the wiring because just in case anything got pinched when this side got hit. And sure enough, in here, we've got 1 or more broken wires. We've got this one right here is definitely broken. I have no idea what it's to, but I'm just going to get some weatherproof connectors, reconnect all of this, wrap it back up, and we should be back in business with both our horn and our fog light. So I think I found out why this speaker sounds stupid. And that's because if you look at it just right, you can see it's bent. I may as well try to fix this. My idea is going to be just to pry this up and away from the bottom. I'm going to see if this will correct the problem I'm having. If not, no big deal. Let's see what that did. Whoa. That actually fixed it perfectly. Well, as I was putting things back together, I noticed a couple of other wires that had been pinched and were exposed. So I went ahead and clipped those and put some connectors on them, weatherproof connectors, and the weatherproof sheeting and conduit over all of that. So this is, you know, pretty much overkill for our purposes, but I wanted to do better than stock, and this certainly looks better than stock in my opinion. And everything's all wrapped up and ready to go back together. So let's get this bumper back on, and we can do a final test of our horn and our lights. Look at that. We've got lights, and the turn signals work. The fog lights work, and they work on both sides. Let's go beep the horn one more time just to make sure that it still works. So our oil seal for the power steering pump has arrived. This is the part number 91201 PC1003. It goes right here, and this is going to solve our problem of flinging fluid all over the hood and all over everything underneath. That said, we're in a bit of a time crunch this morning. I have to get this car down to the shop for an alignment and smog. So I'm going to rip through this as quickly as I can. So I'm going to show you how to do this real quick. First thing you need to do is pull the cruise control module. You need to get it out of the way. And then before we drop the belt, we're going to loosen this bolt here. This is a 12 millimeter and it's reverse threaded. All right, so that's far enough out of the way. Again, like I said, this is reverse threaded, so it's righty, loosey, lefty, tighty. This is probably the only bolt like this on this car. It's the only one that I can think of right now. So that's important to know, because if you go ape shit on it the wrong way, you'll snap the bolt head. So as you can see, it is turning. So what we're going to do here, we're going to get our socket extension. So you use a socket extension to hold this in place. You want to be careful with this because you don't want to damage the pulley. So go slow and you'll be fine. Oops. You know what? We're going to use a 12mm socket because that's going to give us a better fit over the bolt head without damaging it. Okay. There we go. We're cracked loose. So now we can drop the belt. So to get at this, use a 12mm with a U-joint on some extensions, and you can fit it in over the bolt. And I'll show you as soon as I have managed to do that. You see where the socket is on that head there? That's the thing you need to turn to loosen the tension on the power steering. Oops. Fell off. That's cool. All right. That's fine for now because we still have to release the pulley. That is a 14mm, and that is kind of a pain to reach. I really don't like using ratcheting wrenches to break bolts loose, but this is nice and straight. Makes it really easy to get on the bolt head because there is not a lot of room in here. Don't be stuck in there, please. I only turn it a few times. Oh no. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Okay. Ooh, that was dicey. Yeah, you don't want to loosen it too much because then the bolt will get your wrench stuck and you will have nowhere to go. That would be a very, very, very bad time. Okay, so now we can loosen this the rest of the way. So now the belt should come off no problem. The pulley will come off no problem because we've already loosened it. Awesome. So now we have access to the seal. This seal in here is what we're trying to get at. We need to get a pick behind it or something. May have to drill a small hole in order to get the pick through it. I think, oh, that came out real easy. I didn't have to do anything. Now that it's out, we just pop a new one in. We're gonna get a little bit of the power steering oil on it just so that it slides in nicely. Probably want to clean this rim just a little bit so that I don't push dirt into the system. There we go. And now we just slide this on. Alright, so now I'm going to get a socket, just a 19mm, and I'm going to push on it from all sides. We're in. The pulley will do the rest. Put the pulley back on, thread the bolt in. Oh, that was... So the pulley has a little square on it. It's going to be really hard to see on camera. It's right here. And you need to line up that little square edge with the shaft. And you run it back in, lefty-tighty. All right. So the belt is on. We can tension it. And you don't want to over tension this because if you over tension it, you're just going to cause problems with the tensioner, the idler tensioner, and with the pump itself. Usually if you damage the pump, it will start to leak from up here or up here, usually like right here, because what you're doing is the tension will pull these plates apart and it will break that seal. So that's how you know you've definitely tensioned it too far. Yeah, we've got about an inch or so of flex. So let's tighten the tensioner since we're down there right now anyway. I'm going to start with this the box end, and then I'll finish with the ratcheting wrench. Okay, now we got to retighten the pulley. And we're just going to do the same exact thing we did to remove it. 12mm, lefty-tighty. And don't over tighten it. Okay, that's good. I do not want to over tighten that. It's a 12 millimeter, so it doesn't take a whole lot of tension. It definitely takes more than a 10, but if you start putting the force of a 14 on it, you will snap that bolt head. Now we just put the cruise control module back in. Good. Okay, now we got this guy. Plug it back in. Boom. Reconnect the vacuum line. Wherever it went, here it is. And we're done. All right, now we can drive this thing down. After I put my tools away, we can go for a test drive. Okay, I got my documentation ready to go in case I get pulled over. One of the things that makes me slightly nervous about this is I messed with the idle control valve, and I'm just hoping, oh God, that noise is horrible. I'm just hoping that the idle settles down with a little bit of driving. I'm pretty sure it will, but it's just a little bit of a gamble at this point. Let's start it up. So we are legally driving a car with expired tags, because you can, with a one-day operating permit, you can drive a car for this very purpose, for smog. And we need to align it and smog it, and the shops are across the street from each other. And I'm just gonna drop it off and leave it with them. But before we do that, we're gonna drive it around the block a little bit to warm it up, just to make sure that there aren't gonna be any issues that will end up wasting the mechanic's time. So we're just gonna go slow. We're gonna take the side streets. We're not gonna get on the main boulevard until we need to, which is only about a block away from the shop. I don't want to drive this car too fast because it's gonna get real squirrely with this non-alignment that I have. I didn't even bother doing a string alignment. And we're just gonna keep rolling the camera just in case anything stupid happens, like if I get pulled over or something. If I get pulled over, I definitely want to record that, because anything could happen. Well, it's down to 1,000, so maybe it is getting better. Yeah, we're down to a normal idle. Let's go. Let's go to the shop. I feel good about this now. Oh yeah, I can hear the motor is out of cold mode. Like the motor, it sounds differently when it's first starts up and you drive it around when it's cold. It's like a little more chuggy. Well, since I'm not going to see the car for a few days, we're going to go ahead and cap off this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, and comment. And if you don't like what you see, leave a comment anyway. By the way, special shout out to Jonathan, who commented on my last video with some interior detailing tips. That was really, really helpful. And this car looks better, it smells better. Thanks to your comment. I really do like helpful comments. Of course, if you're making a shitty comment, you're going to become a meme of the channel, but those who make really genuinely helpful comments like Jonathan did, I take that advice to heart. I put it to work. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, and we're going to find out if this car passed smog. Thanks again, and I'll see you.